दंडवत प्रणाम मालिक। Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, accept my humble obeisances.
Please accept mine. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So we will start with Srila Prabhupada's Kirtan, as we are doing every day.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramanandamadavam Shri Chaitanyam Ishwaram Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Chunjavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you very much for coming for today's Bhakti Sastri class on this module on Sri Upanishad and Nectar of Instruction. We are presenting the Upanishad part of the module. So we will continue today with verses 8 through 11. 8 was connected to the verses 6 and 7, in which it is described how the Mahabharata is able to understand God. And text number 8 describes how the Mahabharata sees God, what's his perception or his vision of God. So we will start by reading verse number 8 first, and afterwards we will discuss the other 3 verses together because they are very much connected. If anyone would like to read, we will read verse 8, Sanskrit translation, and the first 2 paragraphs of the purport.
Saparyaga chukram akayam avranam asnaviram shuddham apapaviddham kavir manishi paripu swayambhur yatha tathyatavarthan vyadatat shashvatibhya samabhya. Such a person must actually know the greatest of all, the personality of Godhead, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated. The self-sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. Purport. Here is a description of the transcendental and eternal form of the absolute personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is not formless. He has his own transcendental form, which is not at all similar to the forms of the mundane world. The forms of the living entities in this world are embodied in material nature, and they work like any material machine. The anatomy of a material body must have a mechanical construction with veins and so forth. But the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord has nothing like veins. It is clearly stated here that he is unembodied, which means that there is no difference between his body and his soul. Nor is he forced to accept a body according to the laws of nature as we are. In materially conditioned life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and subtle mind. For the Supreme Lord, however, there is never any such difference between him and his body and mind. He is the complete whole, and his mind, body, and himself are all one and the same. In the Brahma Samhita 5.1, there is a similar description of the Supreme Lord. He is described there as Satchidananda Vigraha, which means that he is the eternal form fully representing transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss. As such, he does not require a separate body or mind, as we do in material existence. The Vedic literature clearly states that the Lord's transcendental body is completely different from ours. Thus, he is sometimes described as formless. This means that he has no form like ours, and that he is devoid of a form we can conceive of. In the Brahma Samhita, it is further stated that with each and every part of his body, he can do the work of the other senses. This means that the Lord can walk with his hands, accept things with his legs, see with his hands and feet, eat with his eyes, etc. In the Shruti mantras, it is also said that although the Lord has no hands and legs like ours, he has a different type of hands and legs by which he can accept all that we offer him and run faster than anyone. These points are confirmed in this 8th mantra through the use of words like Shukram, omnipotent.
Thank you very much. So these are some of the qualities of God mentioned in this verse. He's omnipotent, Shukram, and he's omniscient, he knows everything. Kavim means knower. Kavim means poet, but also means knower. And a particular definition which Srila Prabhupada underlines in the purport of quality of the Lord without veins, Ashnaviram, is actually pretty interesting. The question could be raised, how come then that sometimes, for example, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, when he was protecting Arjuna from Bhishma Deva's attack, blood was seen by Bhishma Deva on the transcendental body of the Lord. So the question could be raised, where did this blood was coming from? Isn't it? It can be considered quite amazing how this happens. But the one answer is that actually, as Srila Prabhupada stated in another occasion, that the body of the Lord is not composed of tubes. Like the veins are like tubes of this biological body, but the body of the Lord is transcendental. And when he shows blood on his body, he does so to increase the ecstasy of his devotee. In the case of Bhishma Deva was fighting with Krishna and Arjuna with the mood of Vira, chivalry. So the Lord wanted to reciprocate with this approach of his devotee, and therefore he manifested blood. But the blood of the Lord is not like ours. Our blood, our body is made of material elements. The transcendental body of the Lord is made of Satchit Ananda, energy. It is eternal, conscious, and fully blissful, with blood or without blood. Also, in this verse, it is mentioned, Vyadadak Shashvati Pya Samabhyaha, that the Lord is fulfilling the desires of everyone since time immemorial. And as in previous days, we were connecting, actually it was yesterday in the first part of the class, we're connecting verse number 4 to the narrative of the Kena Upanishad about how the Lord is supreme to the demigods, everybody else. Similarly, we can connect this verse 8 with other important verses from the Upanishads. For instance, some of you may be familiar with the verse Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Vahunam Yovidadati Kaman. That there are many eternal living beings, but there is one Eka, one eternal living being who is fulfilling the desires of the Vahunam, of the many eternal living beings. So he is the giver. Yovidadati Kaman. The same term is used. Vyadadak Shashvati Pya Samabhyaha. Yatatati Atortan. So the purposes of the artha, or the purposes of what's considered prosperous by all different varieties of living entities, can be fulfilled by the mercy of this omnipotent Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipped by the greatest among the transcendentalists, the Mahabhagavatas. And then there are two words which are very important, mentioned towards the end of the verse, Shuddham Apapaviddham. The Lord is pure, Shuddha, and the Lord also is never polluted by anything, not even by sin. He can do anything and he doesn't become contaminated. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we read, after the description of the Rasa Lila of Krishna with the Vraja Gopis, that Maharaj Parikshit asked, how can we understand that the Lord, being the father of Dharma, the father of religion, is engaged in dancing with the wives of others in the middle of the night? And Sri Shukadeva Goswami answered that the activities that the Lord performs are completely transcendental, and he is never polluted by anything which from the ordinary viewpoint may appear to be sinful or harmful. And then Shukadeva Goswami warns all the readers of the Bhagavatam that we should never imitate the great Ishvaras like Krishna or Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, in his own terms, is also a powerful Ishvara. He is a Gurnavatara, the controller of the mode of ignorance. If somebody tries to imitate Lord Shiva by drinking even a little poison, even though he drank a an ocean of poison, but if somebody drinks even a little poison, that person will perish. So similarly, we should never imitate the internal leelas of Krishna with the gopis, but we should worship him as the Lila Purushottama, or the supreme enjoyer of unlimited pastimes of love with his pure devotees. So the point is that he is Shuddham Apapa Vidham. The Lord is pure in two ways. He purifies everyone that touches him, that connects to him, whoever that person may be. And also he's never polluted by anything or by anyone. Any questions or topics you would like to explore?
Yes, Maharaj, may I ask a question?
And of course, yes, Peru.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you so much. Maharaj, like you said that gopis, dealings of Krishna, Lord Krishna with gopis, it's not easy to understand these dealings. There are different types of mallows as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. And the highest mallow is Parkiya Ras, even above the conjugal love. And it has been mentioned that Parkiya Ras is the highest mallow. So how can we understand that Lord Krishna enjoys this a lot, even above conjugal love? And when he was dancing with the wives of others in the middle of the night. So it's a bit confusing. Could you please throw some light over this?
Yes, actually there are two types of Maduriya Rasa relationship. One is called Svakiya, wedded conjugal love, and the other is Parakiya, which it means the relationship with a lover. So it's an unwedded love. In the spiritual world, what is the highest becomes the lowest in the material world, because the material world is described. We see it, for example, in the beginning of chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, describing the banyan tree of material creation, which is upside down. And this is because it is a reflection, a distorted reflection
perverted reflection of the spiritual world.
Yes, perverted and distorted, both terms are used. So it is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So the Parakiya in the material world is considered abominable, because it goes against the principles of Varnashrama Dharma. So it goes against Sanatana Dharma ultimately. But in the relationship of God with his devotees, this idea of making it more difficult to meet with the beloved makes it increases the intensity and the sweetness of the relationship, because it is more risky. It is practically speaking what the gopis did. They sacrificed everything for God, including their social reputation, which in Varna Ashrama society is very important. The religiosity, the social reputation, and so on. But it should be remembered when we study the chapters, the Rasa Panchadhyaya chapters, the 5 chapters from the 10th canto describing the Rasa Lila of Lord Krishna, we should remember what is mentioned there. Actually, the Rasa dance took place during the period of a night of Lord Brahma. So it was not actually like an ordinary night. It was happening on a higher dimension. And also we should remember that some of the gopis, it is described how the gopis that were not allowed to go to meet Krishna by their family members, their physical bodies were next to the bodies of their husbands, and they were dancing with Krishna in their spiritual bodies. So such a dance doesn't happen in a mundane bodily platform of life, like the dancing of boys and girls in the material world. So this is something that should be kept in mind. We see nevertheless that some of our acharyas like Srila Jiva Goswami have been particularly careful not to speak too much about Parakiya, and they have favored Svakiya Rasa, because common people are not able to understand such a subtle and such transcendental topics. So therefore some acharyas have been careful not to make it too public. And also Srila Prabhupada, when some Indian guest asked him to speak about Radha Krishna Lila or Parakiya Lila, he was not keen of doing it. And he said, actually, I'm not qualified. And when they insisted, of course, Srila Prabhupada was qualified, and he speaks about it in his books, but he could see the mentality of the people was not proper, so he pretended not to be qualified because they were not qualified to hear about Rasa Lila. And we see that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also very careful not to speak about certain confidential matters, such as Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. He will speak only with very intimate associates. 3.5 are mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he was very, very careful not to be public about describing certain intimate transcendental topics of the Lord. Is that okay?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's clear.
If you have any other questions, you can also ask if there were any topics from yesterday's verses. You can also ask from previous sections of the study, if it is required. Otherwise, we will move to today's main section, which are verses 9, 10, and 11. So in mantras 9 to 11, we find a comparison of vidya, knowledge, and avidya, ignorance. And these two are compared in different ways, but basically these are the main points we find in these verses. And the Upanishad states that ignorance is dangerous, but worse than ignorance is distorted distorted knowledge, or ignorance in disguise as vidya. Gross ignorance can be identified very clearly. So in that sense, it is less dangerous than when ignorance comes as if it was education, if it was knowledge. This is a very important topic, and later on we will explore it a little bit more closely. And in regard to this, Srila Prabhupada states that pseudo-spiritualists who deviate people from the path of true knowledge are actually worse than the materialist, because they pretend to bring people to a higher position in life, higher level of consciousness, but actually they are degrading people. And Srila Prabhupada warned us many times in his purpose that we should not act in this farcical manner within the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but we should strictly follow the principles taught by the spiritual master, the Vaishnava Acharyas, and the Shastras. Then these verses also explain how true knowledge reveals the truth as it is. So true knowledge is clear as the sunshine, which makes us see everything around us with great clarity. Like sometimes, like Srila Prabhupada explains, how when we are in darkness, we cannot see even our own hand. If we are in a dark room, we have eyes, we have the hand, we put the hand in front of our eyes, but due to the darkness, we are unable to see it. But when true knowledge is given or received, then it is like the sunshine which illuminates everything, and we can see things as they are. And the knowledge, it is mentioned in these three verses, and verses 12 through 14, which we'll be reading tomorrow, explain the principle of how the transcendental knowledge and the process of worship of the Supreme, of the Absolute, should be received from Adhira, someone who is sober in relation to proper behavior in this world. Somebody who is engaging the senses for higher purposes, who is a Goswami, as opposed to a Godas, like the majority of people who follow the pushings of the material senses. So the Sri Upanishad states iti shushuma viranam yenastat vichachakshire. These teachings were given to us by the Dhiras, those who were transcendentally situated. And another important point is that the result of vidya and avidya are completely different. Vidya gives liberation, moksha, liberation from ignorance, from suffering, from material entanglement, karma bandhana, whereas avidya conditions the person to the darkest regions of the material world. So these topics are given. Let us now read the verses. We will read the translation of the verses one after another. If anyone likes to read, please.
अन्नां तमः प्रवश्यन्ति ये विद्ययामुपासते ततो भूया इवाति तमो या उ विद्यायां स्रतः.
Translation.
Those who engage in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge.
Thank you very much.
Purport.
No, we won't read the purport now. I understand you read the purport yourself, so we may read some parts later on. I have selected on the screen. If anyone likes to read this text 10.
Anyat ivahuर्विद्यया नाह्यत् ahuर्अविद्यया iti shushuma धीरानां येनस्तद् vichachakshire. Translation. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge and that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience.
Thank you. And the third verse of the section.
विद्यां चैवं च यस्तद्वेद्यो भयां सह अविद्यया मृत्युं तीत्वा विद्यायामृतम् अश्नुते. Translation. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you very much. So these are the three verses. Now we're going to explore the main points found in Srila Prabhupada's purpose. And of course, if there is something that we do not directly address and you want us to explore it, you can ask questions about it. This is in relation of how avidya in disguise of knowledge is more dangerous than gross avidya. If anyone likes to read.
People
People
who
who
are
are
simply engaged in the pursuit of sense gratification without any real profit in life are in the estimation of Sri Ishopanishad worshipping avidya. And those who play the role of helping this sort of civilization in the name of educational advancement are doing more harm than those who are on the platform of gross sense gratification. The advancement of learning by the godless people is as dangerous as a valuable jewel, the hood of a cobra. The cobra decorated with such a valuable jewel is quite as dangerous as one which is not so decorated. Ishopanishad, Mantra 9, purport.
Thank you very much. Is it clear the metaphor used by Srila Prabhupada of a cobra with a jewel on the head? Why would we say like a cobra with a jewel on the head is more dangerous than a cobra without a jewel? One may say, but the cobra has the same amount of poison. Why it is more dangerous, the cobra with the jewel? What will you reply to that? Any thoughts on it? The amount of poison is the same, so why it's more dangerous? Is it that the jewel is giving more poison or what?
Maharaj, if the snake is having poison, jewel, and it's totally dark, then the snake with jewel, a person might be attracted to see what is there that is shining, and that way he can bit. But in the dark, person don't have it, not having any jewel, we will not go there only. So we don't have any danger from that thing.
Okay, good. So we become attracted by the jewel, and then we get the poison because the cobra will bite. That's the nature of the cobra. So yes. So so-called knowledge, which is compared to such a jewel on the head of the cobra, is very dangerous because we become attracted to it and we think, oh yeah, this is science, this is advanced knowledge, we are progressing. And in the meantime, while we are absorbed in such mundane scientific knowledge, we forget about the goal of life. And then we are bitten by the snake of material nature. We continue sleeping in the comatose state of material existence.
So Maharaj, can we compare this jewel as the material education and material achievements also, which are temptations like temptations?
Yes, certainly. Yes, material achievements can be included in that category because material achievements are considered something, in generally speaking, in society, are considered something very good, very prosperous, and like advanced people achieve all these things and so on. And then we may become distracted from transcendental life. Of course, devotional service is not against material development if such development is used in the service of the Lord and in the mission of the Lord. So there is no harm in using material commodities if it is done for the pleasure of the Lord in a sincere way and with a pure heart. Any other questions on this topic?
Yes, Maharaj. Not a question exactly. I just want to clear myself. You showed us a slide. You showed a slide just a while ago, and in that slide it was written that material knowledge is more dangerous as compared to any other thing, and it's not something at par with the spiritual knowledge. Spiritual knowledge is quite something beyond all this material knowledge. So Maharaj, when we are living this in this material world, And definitely we require material knowledge also, and material achievements also. But yes, agreed. Yes, you said that till the time this material achievement or material knowledge is used in the service of Lord, then it is okay. But when it is going something beyond that, then it is dangerous. It becomes dangerous. So I wish that you please throw some more light over this issue.
Yes, actually, the third of the verses, verse number 11, states that we should have a balanced program of vidya and avidya. Not that we act on the basis of avidya. When we say a balanced program, implies that we learn whatever material things we need to learn for properly functioning in this present state of existence we are. That is to maintain the body and soul together with the purpose of becoming self-realized. We need a certain amount of sense enjoyment, just even for survival, like food and sleep and so on. So therefore, the Ishopanishad states that there should be a balanced program of vidya and avidya. Vidyam chayas, tat vedo bayam saha. Both should be learned in parallel. And therefore we do not, the process of bhakti does not consist, like in some schools of asceticism, that people renounce completely the world altogether. But actually, in the process of bhakti, we use everything in the service of the Lord. And later on, we will do an exercise on this process. We will do a group exercise to explore it a bit further, what it means to keep a balanced program of vidya and avidya. In verse number 9, let's go back. The term is used vidyayam rata, vidya rata. And here it is translated, vidyayam means in the culture of knowledge, and rata, it means to be engaged. The way how the verse is used, nevertheless, is very similar to an expression used by Lord Krishna in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, referring to those who follow the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. Veda Vada Rata. Remember that expression? It's in chapter 2. And Krishna rejects those who are attracted to the sections of the Vedas which describe material elevation as the highest achievement. So we could say that it is used in an ironic way. We could say Vidya Rataha or Veda Vada Rataha. So, which basically indicates the so-called followers of knowledge or so-called followers of the Vedas. So they are supposed to be engaged in knowledge, but they are not. And therefore the verse says, worse still are those engaged in the culture of so-called knowledge. Tato puja ivate tamo. So, if those who cultivate avidya go into the world of ignorance and darkness, and tama, those who cultivate so-called knowledge, that is false knowledge, as if it was true knowledge, and they are described here as vidya rataha. For them, it is even worse. Like still more than those in tama, those in darkness. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport describes 4 types of vidya rata. Or specifically, he's referring to mistaken educators, people who promote avidya as if it was knowledge. So one of these groups is the one we refer from Bhagavad Gita, who follow the flowery language of the Vedas. You find this in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, verses, we can check 40, let us go there and see it. This is the verse. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipaschita vedavada rata partha nanjatastiti vadina kamatmanas varga para chamma karma phala pradam kriya vishesha bahulam bhogaishvarya gatim prati. And this is the translation. If anyone likes to read it, please.
Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this.
Thank you very much. So this is clearly refers to the followers of the Karma Kanda sections of the Vedas for material elevation and mundane enjoyment, even if by following material piety. So naturally this is connected to the types of mistaken followers and mistaken educators on the basis of the Vedas. The second group, Maya Pajarita Jnana, actually the next 3 groups, 2, 3, and 4, are mentioned in chapter 7 of Bhagavad Gita in describing the 4 types of persons who do not surrender unto Krishna. Namam dushkritino muta prapadyante naradama mayaya parita jnana asuram bhavam ashrita. From the 4 types of people who never surrender to Krishna, the first one is not included in this category of vidya rata, because the first one is Muta, the foolish gross materialist, So actually, the Muta is the person grossly ignorant. But it seems to be from these statements from Sri Upanishad that the other three types of people who do not surrender are considered even worse than the Mutas, in that they do not use their knowledge properly. They misuse their knowledge for their own sake, and they also misguide people who follow them. So in that sense, it is considered worse. So the Mayaya Paritakyana refers to the philosophers, scientists, and so on, who are non-devotional, non-devotees. And the term Mayaya Aparita Jnana indicates that their knowledge, jnana, has been stolen, aparita, by Maya, by the illusory energy. So that's important to remember, that not everything which glitters is gold. It's a saying like that. The Asuram Bhava Mashrita are those people who are openly atheistic and they deny the existence of God. They make a philosophy out of it. They're proud of their antagonistic philosophy towards the theology of God. And the last group, Naradama, refers to the lowest among mankind, who are, according to Srila Prabhupada's description, are people who are organized socially, politically, culturally, in a material sense, sometimes even religiously, but without surrendering unto God, without God consciousness. Any questions on these four types of mistaken educators mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport? Okay, good. So we can take a break now. So now it is 3 past in India. So we can come back at 9 past. Okay? Yes?
Okay, Maharaj.
9 past, we come back. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, may I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm quite hesitant to ask this question, but I still struggle actually with this issue. That's why I want to ask you, and I need your clarification over this. So, Maharaj, my question is related to material achievements. Okay. So, what happens? Like in this material world, all the people are there and they are engaged in different activities. Some people are doctors, some people are engineers. So, like this, everyone is engaged in some or the other kind of work according to his or her nature. Okay, but some plum postings are there in this material world also. Like in our ISKCON, in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, we had a great Vaishnava Acharya, Srila Bhakti Thakur. Like he was a district magistrate in his times. So similarly, today also in this material world, there are plum postings, high class government officers, ministers, magistrates, judges. So these are some of the plum postings, and even ISKCON. ISKCON as a body also respects them. And ISKCON, whenever there are functions at the huge level, at big levels, people are called actually. People are invited to inaugurate the projects of ISKCON. So like that. So these kinds of plum postings, at least in my life, they are an obstacle for me. I just get attracted towards them very easily. Of course, everybody cannot be a judge, everybody cannot be a minister like that. But still, even after so many years, even after spending so many years in ISKCON, I still feel quite tempted towards these plum postings. So could you please help me a bit?
When you say tempted, you mean like becoming attracted about such a position, and maybe this could be distracting you from the practice of Krishna consciousness.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj. Exactly.
Yes, one should. Of course, each person may be different, and what I mean is that for some people, they may not be affected by certain positions or money as much as others, because we have different types. Maya may manifest in make us susceptible in different varieties. Maya, it's a very powerful energy, and some people may be more attracted by money, others may be more attracted by enjoyment of the particular senses like eating or sexual enjoyment and so on. So it may change from person to person, that we could say the type of Maya that makes the person more weak. So we should be aware of our nature and take whatever precautions are required to protect ourselves from being affected by Maya. So if we see that a particular type of situation affects us more, so we should just be careful, associate with devotees when dealing with such type of persons. Like, for example, do not go alone if one is visiting such people for preaching, for example. So go with a devotee who is strong spiritually, and in this way take whatever preventions are required to avoid being affected by such positions or situations. I don't know if that addresses the question or your concern.
Yes, Maharaj, you have quite well addressed this question to my concern. And one more point, Maharaj, I wish to make it here regarding the material achievements only. When these plum postings are there, ISKCON as a body, ISKCON GBCs even respects them. They invite them to several functions. So why does this happen? These people, these ministers or these high class government officers, they are not really Krishna devotees. Of course, they respect ISKCON, but they are not devotees, and they are not going to be devotees also in the future. But still, ISKCON invites them. ISKCON always respects them. Why is this so? ISKCON, why doesn't ISKCON invite spiritualists to their functions? Why only government officers or ministers or such people? Just this last point, Maharaj.
Yes, my understanding, this is done in order to engage these leaders of society in devotional service in a particular way. Like in this case, by inviting them, they participate in the celebration. So naturally, they become positively affected by Krishna consciousness by doing that service, even if they do it out of political motivations to get votes from the people or whatever is their motivation. So on the one hand, they are engaged, and on another hand, other people who follow them or who look up to them, also they become attracted to ISKCON, because they see, oh, ISKCON is dealing with the authorities, is authorized, is being supported by the leaders of society. So if the leaders of society are participating, ordinary people say, okay, so let me also be participating somehow in that project. So it has this double dimension. They are engaged in service, and the people who follow them also are engaged in service.
Okay, thank you so much, Maharaj. Everything is clear now. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Otherwise, we have some more topics from these verses. So other important topics which are mentioned in these verses and purpose: the balanced program of material and spiritual knowledge, which we will do a group exercise to explore it, and also the 18 components of knowledge, which Srila Prabhupada refers to the process of knowledge described in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, verses 8 through 12. We're going to look into this. The components of knowledge. We would like to compare, maybe we can do this together, the list of 18 components of knowledge given by Srila Prabhupada in the purport to Mantra 10 with the list found in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. So let's look at the two. We are going to do the reading of the two, and then we can discuss. Please pay attention to the two lists. And you can also, if you have your books at hand, like Ishopanishad and Bhagavad Gita, you can also look yourself and compare. This we have it in mantra number 10. If anyone would like to read this list of 18, starting in the beginning of the purport to text 10 of each Upanishad.
As advised in chapter 13 of the Bhagavad Gita, 13.8 to 1.2, one should culture knowledge in the following way. First point, one should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. Second, one should not pose himself as a religionist simply for name and fame. Third, one should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words. Fourth, one should learn forbearance even in the face of provocation from others. Fifth, one should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others. Sixth, one should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization, and one must submit himself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask relevant questions. Seventh, in order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulative principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. Eighth, one must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. Ninth, one should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. 10th, one should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the body. 11th, one should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor should one consider those who are related to his body to be his own. 12th, one should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, disease, and death. There is no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries of this material body. The best course is to find out the means by which one may regain his spiritual identity. 13th, one should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement. 14th, one should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. 15th, one should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables, knowing that such feelings are just created by mind. 16, one should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna and serve him with rapt attention. 17, one should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture, and one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. 18, one should become a scientist or philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body.
Thank you very much. Now we will look at the list of the Gita. So this is the Gita list. And what we want to look is to compare, like Srila Prabhupada actually has referred to these verses from the Gita. So it is an exercise to look at what do we see in Srila Prabhupada's explanation of these points and what we see in the original verses. Who likes to read, please?
Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these are declared to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance.
Thank you very much. Any thoughts on comparing these two lists? What do you notice?
Maharaj, most of them are quite common.
Yes, they are common. And what would you say is the difference between one and the other? If any differences, maybe you say actually it is not much difference. It's should you look one by one? Of course, we won't have the time to go through the whole list and do a thorough, detailed identification of all the points. I was asking you in case you had noticed something. Like, for example, let's go back to the Upanishad.
Maharaj, can I say something?
Yes.
Maharaj, I can learn that in this all the words are just explained in the Bhagavad Gita 13.8 to 12. All the words are mentioned, but Prabhupada so mercifully he has explained everything in a detail that what exactly have to be done.
Good point. Yes. For example, the first one in the list of Bhagavad Gita is humility, amanitvam, and here Srila Prabhupada describes it as one should become a perfect gentleman and learn to give proper respect to others. So it's a very practical definition of what humility is or how to put it into practices. And the second one, adambitvam, which is absence of pride, it's another way, it's another word to explain humility. So humility and absence of pride both are mentioned by Lord Krishna. And then Prabhupada mentions here, one should not pose himself as a religionist simply for name and fame. So it's also very practical, telling us what to be careful about. And then ahimsa, non-violence, one should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words, like that. So yes, Prabhupada is explaining each of the items mentioned in the list of the Gita. And if you look at the list of the Gita, there are actually 20 items, but here Prabhupada is explaining them in 18 because some of them are together later on in the list. Some of the last go together. Any
Maharaj?
questions or further comments on this topic?
Yes, Maharaj, in CC we read that there are offenses. So they say that these offenses, like we daily recite 10 offenses against the holy name. So in the CC, they are in the different form we read. Like, and when we read in above, so I'm not able to explain nicely, but that in CC we read some in some another form, but as Prabhupada has said her to remember before chanting, and we read that's a little different way. So that is coming in my mind. So things are similar, essence are similar, but the way is little bit more elaborate and simple, like this we are reading here.
Good. Yes, we see that sometimes Srila Prabhupada explains the 10 offenses in different parts of his books. Also, for instance, in the second canto 111, in the purport to the verse, itan nirvidyamananam ichatam makuto payam yoginam naripanirnitam harir namanukirtanam. Srila Prabhupada explains the 10 offenses in a way a little different from other sections, and that shows how the same topic has different perspectives and nuances. And sometimes the acharyas emphasize one aspect or another aspect. So here we see something similar in the explanation of vidya. A very important consideration is that vidya, we see from these two lists, vidya is not book knowledge. Of course, book knowledge is part of the process of vidya, like studying Shastra and living according to the direction of Shastra. And therefore, we are having these courses to go deeper into the meaning of Shastra. But knowledge, true knowledge, vidya, true education is not informational as much as it is transformational. You follow? So it is not about having the data, the information, and that's it. But it is about transforming our hearts by applying the instructions given in the Shastra by the spiritual master and by the acharyas, by the devotees. In this way, we become mature in knowledge. Otherwise, it may be just theoretical information. But theoretical information without practical application will be insufficient. Of course, the theoretical knowledge should be there in order to apply it. But we see how Krishna describes the knowledge more as values and character than simply as activities of the mind or the intellect. Any comments or questions on this point? Also, in the conversations between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Ramananda Roy, education is described, and also in instructions to Sanatana Goswami. And we see how a learned person, like Sanatana Goswami is saying, people say I am very learned because I know many languages and I know different cultures. But actually, I do not consider myself learned because I don't know who am I. So true knowledge means to understand the difference between the body and the soul and how we are eternal servitors of God. That's real knowledge, and knowledge is manifested by the character of the person, meaning having a character marked by divine qualities. Okay, let's look. And this section of the Upanishad describes itishu shruma dhiranam, how the knowledge was heard from those who are dhira. Did you do nectar of instruction already?
No, Maharaj, not yet.
Yeah. You will see how the first verse of nectar of instruction can be connected to this verse, verse number 10. Itishu shruma dhiranam yenastat vichachakshire. That we should learn the transcendental knowledge from a person who is dhira. And the dhira is described in the first verse of Upadeshamrita. Vacho vegam manasa krotta vegam jiva vegan etan Jiva vegam udarupasta vegam etan vegan yovisaheta dira sarvam api mam pritivim sashishya. That the person who is able to tolerate the urges of the speech, the mind, the anger, the palate, the tongue, the stomach, and the genitals is qualified to make disciples around the world. So there is a correspondence between these original texts of the Sri Ishopanishad and Srila Rupa Goswami's teachings in the Upadeshamrita, which are founded on the Vedas, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. Also, the term Dhira is used in the second chapter of the Gita, Virastatra Namuhyati. That the sober person becomes not disturbed with the change of body. Dehinosmin yatha tehe kaumaram yauvanam chara tatha dehantara praptir virastatra namuhyati. So the change of body takes place from one body to another at the end of life, in the same way that during this life, it goes from childhood to youth to adulthood to old age. And the person who is sober does not become bewildered. Okay, so before we do the next exercise, which will be a group exercise, any comments or questions?
Maharaj, the best example of a dheer person is Lord Shiva. Am I right?
He's given yes. Example of Lord Shiva is given because he was undisturbed when Parvati Devi came to him. So she was touching his private parts and he was undisturbed. So that's an example of a dhira who is not disturbed by the pushes of the senses. Srila Prabhupada nevertheless gave the example of Lord Shiva uniting with Parvati and begetting Kartikeya. And sometimes Prabhupada gives the example that just control of the senses without bhakti is not enough. And sometimes this example is given that Haridas Thakur was not disturbed by Maya, but Lord Shiva later on relented and engaged in sexual activity. But of course, the activities of powerful Ishvaras like Lord Shiva should not be considered ordinary. Sometimes they are used as examples to illustrate a particular teaching from Shastra in a specific context. So let's now reflect, and we can reflect in groups. Who will help to create the groups, please? Who will do that today? Who is able to do it? Anyone here? Aradhya Gadadhara Prabhu, are you able to do it? Or Gaurav Prabhu? Somebody helped me the other day that
Maharaj, Aradhya Prabhu is the host. He can help.
Are you there? Aradhya Gadadhara Prabhu? Maybe you are muted, you have to. No, he's not muted, so. Okay, what to do? I can try, let me see. I can create, okay. I'll create, so, I'll create a place, but let's look at the exercise first. So you are clear what you are going to, you are requested to do. When to the statement made in the last verse that Vidyam cha vidyam chayas tat vedo vayam saha avidyayam mrityum tirva vidyayam mritam ashnute, that one may enjoy the nectar of immortality, amritam, through understanding in parallel the path of vidya and ignorance. So this will be the question. What does it mean to learn together the paths of knowledge and ignorance in order to attain immortality? So this is what you need to discuss in your groups, what it really means in practice. And it's good that you reflect on your own personal application of this principle. How do you do it? How do you combine the two paths? The path of vidya, and you are also engaged in the world, and you also learn some practical things. So how to do this properly in order to attain immortality? Is it clear, the question? You will have for that about, say, 10 or 12 minutes. I'll call you back, and now I'll create the groups. So 1 second, let me see if it allows me to out. So the groups will be automatic. We'll see 1, 2, 3, 13 persons. Then we will create 3 groups. So we'll create 3. Okay, so 3 groups are created. Please go in, and in 10, 12 minutes, I'll call you back. wait half a minute for everybody else to come back.
Yes, Maharaj, sure.
How it was the exercise? Any realizations coming from the exercise?
Sorry, Maharaj, what are you asking?
Yeah, any realizations you like to share from the exercise, from the discussions you had in your groups? Maybe one member of each group can summarize what happened in their groups.
Yes, Maharaj, we had a group of 4 and we 3 in fact interacted with each other. So I would like to invite Priya Satyabhama Mataji to throw light on the issue. Yes, Priya Satyabhama Mataji.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, Maharaj, we basically discussed that how Shastra can help us in, I'm just blanking out right now. Thank you, sir. Okay, we realize, Maharaj, that, how ignorance, leads us astray from the spiritual path. We get into ignorance, but once we start back on the spiritual path, we try to learn more Shastra, and we try to understand the gist of it, and eventually it leads us to devotional service and a little bit more closer to Krishna. I mean, it takes a lot to become a pure devotee and everything, but we can always start with baby steps.
Okay, good, thank you.
Maharaj, in conclusion, I would like to say that before joining ISKCON, we all were in ignorance. And after coming into ISKCON, we have started getting true knowledge. And now we can definitely appreciate this time a lot because we have spent that time of ignorance a lot. So unless and until we have that time, we cannot appreciate this time. So darkness is also important as light is important. So one can appreciate light when one has been in darkness. So this is my crux of the knowledge.
Okay, good. Any other groups? Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Even we were 4 and we spent most of the time understanding the question, what we are being asked. And we concluded that everyone is struggling hard for existence, but the law of material nature is so hard and fast that it does not anyone to surpass it. One cannot make one-sided attempts. With knowledge, by gaining knowledge only, we can go back to Godhead, which is the ultimate purpose of our life. And ignorance how can we learn from ignorance is that we can see our from the Shastras how ignorant people have fallen out from the path from the goal of God realization. Hence we can learn from our ignorance how can we not make mistakes which we see in the Shastras people have made, and we should not try and avoid.
Very good. Good, thank you.
Yes, Maharaj. I'd like to say something on the last part of the Mataji's, that is that she has explained. As we can learn from the ignorance that like everything is, as we see around the world, everything is leading to mortality. So why we are so much attached to the immortality, and why we want to stay here? We have to learn from all around the things that is leading to mortality. So now as our spiritual journey has begun, so now we have Shastras. So thankfully, the door out of the ignorance is accessible for all of us. So what we have to do, we have to just open our eyes and minds and to see around the world, and by contemplating the information that we have got from the Shastras, so we can regain our spiritual identity, that is true immortality. This is what we can learn from the ignorance. This is the last one.
Good, very good. Thank you.
And Maharaj, I was the third one after Mataji and Prabhuji. The one point I was thinking, Maharaj, is that combining the path of knowledge and ignorance. Of course, the path of knowledge is so powerful that it definitely, what to say, that it will automatically take us to, it's so powerful that it can take us to the to help us to attain immortality. And how we can combine it both is like ignorance, as one of the points told by another group, that yes, we were in ignorance, and we also in the present age also we see that so many people are in ignorance only. And in the NOD we read that the origin of all the papam and bijam and the birth cycle sansara, we are here only just because of the root cause is what is ignorance. So just by learning from our mistakes and keeping in that mind, and by the mercy of present acharyas, taking the path of knowledge now, so like this we can combining both and move ahead and can attain mortality, our goal of life we can attain.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
One more group. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Maharaj, in our group we discussed another dimension of this question and the verse 11, in which it says that one should balance the material knowledge and spiritual knowledge, vidya and avidya. And we read through the purport of text 11 from where this question is coming. And we saw that while most of the purport Srila Prabhupada was referring to the problems attached with being in ignorance, and he took the example of Hiranyakashipu. But towards the end of the purport, there is some discussion on how the material knowledge is also important and can complement spiritual knowledge. For example, Srila Prabhupada writes that the activities of the body cannot stop, and we need to take care of those aspects of our life as well. So we were just discussing if it's not about renouncing the material side of the knowledge, but it's more like how to regulate the material life and use that knowledge for advancements of spiritual causes. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much. Very good. Good. You came up with very good points in relation to balancing the path of knowledge and the process of ignorance, and to integrating them in a way which is constructive for full self-realization in Krishna consciousness. Any questions or comments on any of the points of these three verses we have seen this afternoon?
Maharaj, Maharaj,
yes.
can I please request to throw some light on this question? Yes, we came up with the point, but if you can say one, punch point so that can be remembered.
Okay. Okay. Yes, the point is that everything should be used in Krishna's service. If we see everything in relation to Krishna, and we use it for Krishna and for specifically for his pleasure, then ignorance will disappear, and ignorance will be actually dovetail and transform into knowledge, because ignorance is nothing more than the absence of knowledge. But because we are identifying with our mind and bodies and senses, So naturally, we have the tendency to think that the needs of the body and the mind are our needs. And therefore, in that transition from moving from our conditional identity in bodily identification to our original identity as eternal servants of Krishna in our Satchitananda transcendental bodies, we need to do a gradual process of integration of the two. And therefore the path, therefore it is mentioned that we need to combine the path of Vidya with the culture of the path of avidya, or using the body, the mind, the senses, and society in the service of God to come to the point of self-realization. I hope this addresses your question.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so very much, Maharaj.
Before we end, I was while you were working, I was writing to Yagya Nanista Prabhu. Let me just check, because he was answering. I was asking him about having a class on Thursday so we could catch up. So he's saying, as our class is supposed to be completed by 22nd of June, that's actually tomorrow, right? So we have scheduled His Holiness Bhakti Prabhava Maharaj from 24th of June. There is only buffer of 1 day, which I kept to cover any uncertainty. That is the Thursday, 23rd June. So our suggestion is that we can increase the timing of the class by 30 minutes.
Yes, Maharaj, sure.
On Wednesday. So on Wednesday, we can have class from 6:30 to 9:30. Then I have to ask from the students.
Yes, Maharaj, no issue. You can.
So if from 6:30, it means starting half an hour before. Is that okay for everybody?
Yes, Maharaj, we will come.
So, but if we do that, then it means I'll finalize with Jagadanishta Prabhu this point. But if the idea is that tomorrow we come half an hour before, it's fine with me. Still, we need to. I don't think then we will need to come back on Thursday, isn't it? That's what he's proposing, I guess. Did you discuss with him this or not yet? Not yet. Okay, so what to do? Let me just 1 second. He's not connected, right? Just give me 1 minute just to ask him.
Maharaji, can you also tell us about the OBAs? There are 3 OBAs in the course, so we have to do 1 or 2?
You mean for this particular question?
No, sorry. For there are questions which are the OBA questions, so we need to do 1. That's what Rukmini Mataji has just clarified. But do we know which one, or we can do any?
Yesterday I gave you the choice that you can choose.
Okay.
So from my side,
Okay, maybe I missed it. Any? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So should we then plan? Let's do like that. Let's do the class tomorrow, a longer class. So we will start half an hour before, and we may end half an hour later if we need, because then we are covering actually two sections. We'll be covering verses 12 through 14 in the first hour, and then we will have about 2 hours for this second part, verses 15 through 18. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.